16th, 2014. And the last video that I made was regarding the Bechtold family, George and Janet, and what kinds of things happened at their house when I was a kid. And when I said I was held hostage, as in I was seated in a, this is just one example, I was seated in a hard back chair, like a wood chair, and tied up to it in their bedroom. And then people were coming in and out. They were letting different grown adults come in to molest me. And my age at that time, I sort of remember two different incidences of that, or like time frames where that was done. So for example, this kind of a project or whatever may have occurred for over about a week. But I remember it happening possibly more than one time, probably between the ages of like 8 to maybe age 10. I don't think I was as old as age 10 even. I was younger. And I do remember that something was around age 8. But it's sometimes hard for me to remember exactly how old I was, because I was pretty, when I wasn't being drugged or tortured, I was very cognizant and kind of pretty mature for my age. And so there are times that I can think about, I have memories when I was really, really little, and they're somewhat sophisticated memories, because that, typically you would think of an older child having, not a really young child, remembering details of. And by sophisticated, I just mean, sort of mature thinking for my age and memory processes. So occasionally I remembered things and then thought I was older, and then even realized I was even younger than I thought. And it's just because of the way that I processed some of that information. But anyway, I was a kid. And at the time, for example, for a better time frame, Bechtolds had a son. Well, they had all their kids except for, I don't remember Eliza around. I don't know if they'd had their third child yet or not. And they probably did, because she was around my brother's age, but I didn't ever see her. I did see Robin occasionally back then, and definitely saw Nathan. And to give you an idea of a time frame, he was still in high school. He was in like junior high or high school. He was big kid is how I saw him, or a young adult. He wasn't fully, I was able to recognize that he wasn't the fully grown-up man like some of the other adults were, but he wasn't like just a little kid either. And he was involved in some of that too, and they included him in a lot of this. So before I talk more about what they did when they tied me to a chair and everything, they were also involved with like some sex abuse of me, the bottles for blowjobs kinds of sex abuse, where they wouldn't let me eat or anything until I gave a series of men blowjobs. And that occurred at Eric Lund's dad's house, which was in the Sherwood-Wilsonville area at the time. And it was in the woods, so it was sort of a woodsy area all around. and people would show up there, and I was much younger. I was even maybe age 4, 5, probably a little bit, no, maybe age 4 to 5, even maybe up to age 7 occasionally. I don't think too much. I was a little bit older for that. But, and then there was another time where, I was repeatedly trafficked to some of the same places. So, like, I would get sent off to the Lunds for this blowjobs for milk kind of thing when I was maybe, say, age 4. And then a couple years later, or a year later, maybe, they waited a couple years though, and then they'd send me over there to do the exact same thing again. But maybe that the next time it wouldn't be for a bottle, it would be to avoid getting just tortured, plain old tortured. You know, do this or you'll be electrocuted. And I was electrocuted pretty much anyway with the box. And they had, at these gatherings, they had groups of, you know, up to 20 people or more, even up to 30. Cops, FBI. When I was older, I began to realize what their positions were, because they were all greeting each other and meeting, and all part of the government group. And they did include a few people maybe outside of like government group stuff, but it was like people that they wanted to coordinate with them and who would work with them anyway. So it was sort of it was always government. And then occasionally they included people that they thought they could trust to keep these government secrets, even if they weren't specifically working for the government. You know, like they might have a friend or something, and include him in it, or her. So, and it was one time, this Lund, the guy who was hosting all this stuff at his house for that, Eric Lund's dad, he acted like, when I was older, like he wanted to help me. But some of these adults, they would say things like that, and I was always constantly being thrown off track. Are they really serious about how they have intentions to try to help me, and they want to help me escape or get out, and are they going to do something to try to free me from this? Or are they just repeating this stuff and saying, I'm going to help you, because that was part of their alibi for themselves? They wanted me to think that just be quiet because I'm going to take care of something for you. And did it as a way to, like, console me or something. Because some of these people who were saying they were going to help me, call me anytime you want, if you need anything, you know, or I'm going to help you, or anything like that. Some of those people, I would then later see smirking over at other adults. Now, you know, once again, if they're smirking over at other adults, were they trying to keep up a cover for the other adults when they really intended to help me? I mean, that's possible. But more often than not, what it looked like is that they were just trying to feed me, the kid, a bunch of lies, you know, about how they were going to help me and try to pacify me, or make themselves look better than they were. So sometimes it really was not easy to tell who was having regrets or second thoughts about what they were doing to me. And for the most part, looked like the majority of them, like this very large group, didn't have any regrets. They were just like gung-ho about this. There was hesitation, a little nervousness from a few of them, but it was kind of astonishing how many people had no qualms whatsoever. Once they felt that it got government protection, there was very little hesitation with what they were doing to me. So that was a couple of things that happened that also involved the Bechtolds. But okay, at their house, when I was tied to this chair, I was tied with ropes and with scarves. And then the door was opening, and a man would come in, and they would untie me just so that I could get down on my knees, or I could sit in the chair still and give him a blowjob. But they wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me stand up or leave the room or really leave the area of that chair that I had been tied to. But they were practicing their trigger codes. Like they would say certain words, and then they would have like a certain motion or a hand motion or trigger that was to indicate what they wanted from me and expected. And then if I didn't do it, someone else would come back in the room, use the electrocution box on me and torture me. And then I'd get, I wouldn't be allowed to eat. And I would be stuck there tied up to that chair for hours and hours, maybe even a day. Sometimes completely isolated, they'd just leave me there. And where my parents were, I have no idea, because they weren't coming in and out of that room when that was happening. It was more like that was George or Janet Bechtold opening the door, or Nathan, letting these people in and out. And I didn't see a Bob or Dixie at that time all the time. I wondered if they were in another room and the same thing was happening to them, or if they weren't even there at all. You know, I mean, maybe they'd gotten whisked away so that one of the sets of twins could get swapped out, and I was just stuck there. So they were basically forcing me to kneel and to do these blowjobs, one government man after another, and repeatedly practicing their death threats against me and their triggers and codes and cues that they used to instruct me without saying very, very much at all what they expected me to do or else. And they did have, there were a couple of men that brought in guns, and others that motioned at pocket knives or knives at their belt. And so some of the people, for example, were like local cops from the Sherwood-Wilsonville area and Tualatin, Tigard. That whole Tualatin, Tigard, Sherwood-Wilsonville, and then area, there were cops coming in from there. There were some judges. There were people coming in from driving over from Portland. And then there were some people who I remember being part of like the DEA, like other government groups. FBI Rasmussens, there's a Mormon family over there in Sherwood, Oregon. They came over, and the Rasmussen family has an uncle, at least, that's a known FBI agent. He was showing up, and his family as well. And I remember when this kind of a session thing happened against me and I was a little bit older, I had even spoken up and said what shocked me the most was the Mormons that were involved. And they were even bringing their wives over. People like these nice Mormon family-oriented women that were supposed to be family-oriented. They were showing up, you know, right on the heels of their pedophile husbands to threaten me. And then also, when I was a lot younger, I would say around age 8 to maybe even younger than that, maybe age 6 or so. And then possibly again when I was a little bit older. But at one point, they had me tied up to the chair, and I don't remember it being just a bunch of men coming back and forth, or maybe it was like a whole sequence of, you know, like, as I say, 20 to 40 men coming in to rape me. At one point, I'm going to have to make another clip to finish describing this.